5 hours earlier, before anyone in Moscow or Astrakhan had the faintest idea of what was coming, 14 explosive-laden drones lifted off from concealed launch sites deep inside Ukraine. Each carried a warhead equivalent to 40 kilograms of TNT. Their ascent was fast, disciplined, and silent, like a squadron of invisible bombers climbing into the night. These were not ordinary drones. They were purpose-built for a single mission: fly hundreds of kilometers through hostile airspace and strike one carefully chosen target with devastating precision. That target lay far from the front lines, a Russian cargo vessel anchored in the Caspian Sea. For days, Ukrainian and Allied satellites had been locked onto the ship, tracking every movement, every subtle shift at anchor, every attempt to hide in plain sight. The captain, convinced he was safely beyond Ukraine's reach, what about his routine, unaware that his position was being monitored in real time from orbit? When the launch command finally came, it came through those same satellites, and the drones responded instantly. The vessel was no ordinary freighter. Displacing nearly 4,900 gross tons, it was packed with military cargo. Nearly 5,000 tons of Iranian-supplied material filled its holds, components for Sheikh 136 and Sheikh 238 drones, avionics modules, gyroscopic sensors, navigation systems, electrical assemblies, and crates of 122mm rocket ammunition. In battlefield terms, the ship represented weeks of Russian drone strikes, hundreds of UAVs waiting to be assembled and unleashed against Ukrainian cities and frontline units. Its name was Port Olia-4, a 110-meter cargo ship sailing under the Russian flag. The captain believed he had chosen wisely. Rather than docking at Russia's Port of Olia, where prying eyes or sabotage posed risks, he anchored inland within the Vulnerabilities shipping canal, a narrow and secluded stretch of water. To him, it was a cautious move, one that reduced exposure. The Caspian Sea felt untouchable. After all, it lay roughly 800 kilometers from Ukraine's front lines. Who could possibly reach him here? Ukrainian intelligence could and had already planned for this exact moment. The shipment's timing, its route, and even its anchorage patterns had been mapped days in advance. The operation relied on multiple layers of detection. Japanese commercial satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar provided the first critical data. Unlike optical systems, SAR satellites could see through cloud cover, track vessels at night, and detect ships even when their transponders were switched off. Analysts pored over radar reflections, comparing hull signatures and anchor chain positions. Layered satellite passes revealed the ship's drift angle and anchorage window 4 to 6 hours, more than enough time to execute a precision strike. Signal intelligence formed the second layer. Communication silence and minimal radar emissions revealed the vessel was operating in low-profile mode, attempting to avoid attention. But that silence also betrayed it. Ukrainian planners identified a narrow window for a multi-axis single-wave attack. The objective was precise: do not detonate the volatile cargo. Instead, cripple and sink the ship in a controlled manner, sending thousands of drone components and rocket munitions to the bottom of the Caspian Sea. For the mission, Ukraine selected long-range kamikaze UAVs based on the UJ-26A platform. Built with composite airframes, their radar signatures were minimal. Cruising at 150 to 180 kilometers per hour, they were fast enough for long-range travel, yet slow enough to slip beneath radar detection. Their guidance relied on a GNSS-INS hybrid system, backed by electro-optical confirmation during the final approach. Even under GPS jamming, the drones could still find their targets. Each carried a 40-kilogram class warhead. Some were fragmentation types, others semi-penetrating, carefully selected to achieve different effects, ripping open thin deck plating, rupturing ventilation shafts, fracturing internal beams, and punching holes along the waterline. With extended fuel capacity, the UJ-26A could fly up to 1,200 kilometers, more than enough to reach the Caspian. 14 drones formed the strike package, 12 attackers and 2 relay units. At 5:25, final synchronization was completed. The attack plan unfolded across 4 axes. One group would approach from the stern on the starboard side, targeting the engine room, ventilation systems, and aft deck. A second group would come in from the bow on the port side, striking the bridge and forward compartments. A third would hit the midsection, cracking beams around the cargo hatches and opening the waterline to destabilize the hull. The final pair served as diversion drones, ready to deploy explosive barriers if tugboats or patrol vessels attempted a rescue. At 5:45, the drones launched. Their 5-hour flight was meticulously choreographed. Flying just 20 to 60 meters above the sea, most blended in the background radar clutter. Two climbed higher, between 300 and 500 meters, acting as relays and maintaining visual coordination. To port security systems, the small composite aircraft appeared as low-priority echoes harmless noise. At 10:28 local time, the first drone struck. Its warhead detonated against the aft upper deck, tearing open thin plating around the engine ventilation shaft. Fire ripped through cable trays, short-circuiting damaged control systems. Fuel pumps and generators faltered. Fire suppression systems weakened. Seconds later, a second drone slammed into the starboard waterline, partially penetrating the hull and sending torrents of seawater flooding into the lower compartments. And that was only the beginning. The third and fourth drones arrived moments later. They slammed into the ship's midsection, one tearing into a cargo hatch cover, the other ripping through the portside waterline strip. The impact shattered internal connections, sending smoke, flame, and burning debris across the deck. The vessel lurched and began listing to starboard. On the bridge, alarms screamed as the captain declared an emergency. Port authorities scrambled 2 tugboats and a patrol craft toward the stricken ship. They would never arrive in time. At 10:31, the 5th drone struck the bow, detonating near the control room. Electrical panels short-circuited instantly, plunging the bridge into darkness. Main power collapsed. Critical systems fell back to battery reserves. The Ukrainian drones had been built for this moment. Each followed pre-programmed inertial flight paths, immune to GNSS jamming. Their warheads were deliberately varied, some fragmenting on impact, others using delayed fuses to carve cavities through the hull and fracture internal beams. Between 10:33 and 10:36, the 6th and 7th drones hit. They tore a massive gash into the starboard hull, accelerating flooding beyond control. At 10:38, with fire spreading and compartments filling rapidly, the crew abandoned ship. Lifeboats splashed into the Caspian as thick smoke poured from the stern. 2 drones were intercepted by Russian defenders, but it was far too late. At 10:41, the 8th drone struck the lower midship belt, increasing the list to 7 degrees. Flooding pumps were overwhelmed. Water surged unchecked through the vessel's interior. The 9th and 10th drones followed, slamming into the stern shaft tunnel. Propulsion lines ruptured, spilling fuel oil beneath the deck. Flames surged higher. Moments later, the 11th and 12th drones detonated barrier blasts along the tugboat approach lanes, blocking rescue attempts. Overhead, relay drones continued transmitting telemetry, recording the ship's final moments in precise detail. The damage cascaded like falling dominoes. First came the power loss, then pump failures, then uncontrolled flooding. The list worsened. Structural fatigue spread through the hull. By 10:50, the Port Olia-4 was mortally wounded. Within hours, it capsized. At 14:32, satellite imagery confirmed the outcome. The Port Olia-4 lay submerged beneath the Caspian Sea, smoke still curling into the air above the wreck. Moscow initially downplayed the incident, claiming only minor damage. But photographs soon leaked online. Open-source analysts geolocated the images using shoreline features, cranes, and even light poles, confirming the wreck's precise position. Satellite data corroborated a smoke plume visible from more than 10 kilometers away. On August 14th, Ukraine's general staff confirmed what was already clear. The Port Olia-4 had been carrying Iranian-supplied UAV components and ammunition, and it had been sunk in a coordinated Ukrainian strike. Follow-up imagery on August 19th showed Russian salvage operations underway. The scale of the loss was staggering. A single Sheikh drone production set, weighs roughly 200 kilograms. With nearly 5,000 tons of cargo aboard, the ship carried enough components for hundreds of drones. Each Sheikh carries a 40-kilogram warhead. In total, the submerged cargo represents more than 12,000 kilograms of explosive potential. But this was more than a numerical loss. Without avionics, navigation systems, and power units, Russia could not assemble Sheikh drones at scale. The strike didn't just sink cargo, it erased weeks of planned bombardment. Strategically, the attack shattered long-held assumptions. Russia had believed the Caspian Sea was safe. Ukraine proved otherwise. An inland sea, once considered untouchable, had suddenly become reachable. Markets reacted immediately. War risk insurance premiums surged. AI's blackouts increased. Ships adopted false call signs. Convoys slowed port turnover. Every adjustment exposed new vulnerabilities. Overland routes left longer intelligence trails. Transshipment through multiple hubs drove costs higher. Diplomatic ripples spread across the region. Caspian coastal states convened emergency maritime security talks. For the first time, the Caspian was no longer a rear area sanctuary. It was a contested battle space. From Kiev's perspective, the strike was a masterstroke. It extended the war far beyond the Black Sea, forcing Moscow to rethink logistics, assumptions, and defensive posture. By sinking a single vessel, Ukraine eliminated thousands of future drones and disrupted the tempo of Russia's air campaign. For Russia, the implications were sobering. Without Iranian components, Sheikh production faltered. Nightly drone barrages slowed. Supply lines once thought secure now felt exposed. The illusion of safety vanished. The sinking of the Port Olia-4 was more than the loss of a ship. It was a psychological shock, a logistical rupture, and a stark demonstration that no rear area lay beyond Ukraine's reach. In modern war, distance matters less than precision, intelligence, and resolve. What followed was uncertainty. If Ukraine could strike once, it could strike again. Every vessel bound for Russia now sailed under a shadow, never knowing when or where the next swarm of drones might appear. And that uncertainty, more than the wreck itself, became Ukraine's true victory.